Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 7 of Commitmas 2, a month of merriment. We are here tonight with Mike Marseglia. Mike, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Doing awesome. Thank you very much. Tonight, Mike's going to be talking about branching, but before we get on to that, I've got a few show notes for you. You got questions? You want to join the conversation? You've got something to add? Maybe a different way to do things? Uh, Hop in on the conversation on either the at Commitmas or at vBrownbag uh, Twitter accounts, or both have their own hashtag that's been going pretty well too. So if you've got a question, comment, concern, you can drop it in either of those. All of our past recordings, if you're just joining us tonight or you somehow stumbled across this on the interwebs, you can catch all of our recordings at bit.ly/commitmas2 and our GitHub repo, 30 Days of Commitmas 2015 on GitHub. With that, I am going to make you presenter, Mike,
Okay.
which should be happening now.
All right. Yep. Okay. Good
And off to the
evening.
races.
Hey, thanks. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Marseglia. I'm at mmars on Twitter, and I'm going to talk a little bit about branching in Git tonight. Branching is one of Git's, I guess, one more powerful features because of how Git takes snapshots and how it does branching is very easy. It's very low cost. It's very easy to just create these branches and destroy them at will. The Git book has a really nice diagram that simplifies branching. Right here we see that we've got several commits, and we've got master in the red here, and that is our master branch, which is created by default when you first initialize your repository. And see, we've got another branch, testing, which is one commit after that. So really, these branches are just pointers right to these commits. There's nothing nothing other magical going on behind the scenes. And because Git makes it so easy to the way it branches like this, that's what makes it just easy to just make lots of branches and destroy them or create them at will. So your default branch is master. It's created by default when you run git init on a repo. So if you were to just run git init and then run a git status, you would see that you're on branch master by default from the beginning. You can rename this. Most people don't. Because master just seems to make sense, and because it is the default for everyone, most people just leave it that way. Otherwise, it would be a little confusing. A couple of basic branching commands I'm just going to run through. So if you'd like to create a branch, you can use the git branch command. But that won't actually check you into the branch. That'll simply create it for you. If you then want to start working on that branch, on that new copy, you would do git checkout and then the name of your branch. And Git will then tell you you've now switched to branch testing. Now that you're on testing, you can continue to edit files, make code changes. A lot of people will like to create a new branch if they're working on a new feature or a specific bug fix, and it helps to keep all that work into that branch rather than committing lots of little changes into master. And if you'd like the shortcut version, you can just do a git checkout -b and then the name of your branch, and it will do both of those at the same time. Once you're done with your branch, you can push your branch to a central repository. You just do a git push origin testing, and that will push it out to the remote repo. Now your branch is available for others to go ahead and grab. And if you wanted to then delete your branch, you could do a git branch -d testing it would delete your local branch and just get rid of it entirely. And if you can even delete remote branches as well by just doing a git push origin and then dash dash delete testing. There's a older obsolete syntax where before, instead of it was a dash dash delete, it used to be a colon testing. I think it still works, but this was new in a more recent version of Git. Branching is very, very simple. What's not so simple about branching is the strategies around branching. And I'm going to go over a couple of those now. So why would you want to use branching, and what sense does it really make? You've got another copy of your code, but why would you want to do that? So one of the ways that you strategize around branching is to do what's called a feature branch workflow. So here's a tutorial from Atlassian Software. They've got some pretty good tutorials on workflows. The main idea behind feature branching is that for every new feature that you want to develop in your code, you would create a new branch, and then you would start working everything that has to do with that feature, and only that feature would again get put into that dedicated branch. And that makes it easier if you have multiple developers that are all working on one code base, and say if you want to get a group of folks to either work on that feature while maybe everyone else is off doing something else. This kind of workflow allows for that, so that you can make all of these changes, and then once you're finished with your feature branch, you would then go through the merge process, which will Git merging will be covered in another episode of Commitmas. And merging is the way you get your changes back into the master branch. So you would do a git merge for that. This is pretty easy, the feature branch workflow. And when you're thinking about this, it really doesn't talk about what would you do if you had a hotfix. What would you do if you had a stable release, but you just needed to make one small change? Would you branch for that? And it also, the feature branch workflow really doesn't address release versions or tagging your release on a particular branch in order for it to be released. So there was another workflow called the gitflow workflow, and this uses a lot of branches. And if you could look at this diagram, you can see it probably looks a lot like spaghetti. And this workflow advocates for two branches, two permanent branches, development branch, which is here in yellow, and advocates for a master branch here with the blue dots. And the idea here is that your development branch is always being worked on, never ready for real release. There's always something going on with it, and you're always taking the work from your development branch into your release branch, doing any little fix-ups before you have to release, and then merging that into master, and your master is then has that commit tagged, and then that's your release. Then it has other branches for hotfixes, feature branches, and this workflow is very opinionated, and it uses, looks like just about 5 different branches, and it's very manual. There's a lot of steps that you kind of have to follow. I've used this workflow, and it's worked, but when you're switching branches a lot and then you're trying to merge all those branches back in, it can be kind of cumbersome, and sometimes you can lose track. So there's another workflow that uses branching. This one is great. This one's called gitflow considered harmful. This is the anti-gitflow branching strategy and workflow. And in this strategy, there's really just one branch that everyone's working on, and they call it master. because that's usually that's usually the default, and everyone pretty much understands that. And all the other branches that you create are just temporary. So you would create a branch, get checkout dash B, feature XYZ, do all of your work, and then at some point you merge your work back into the master branch. And then once the merging is done, and if you've resolved any conflicts, you delete your branch. You get rid of that branch entirely from the central repository, cleaning it up so that you don't really need it anymore, because its whole history has been, you've taken that and brought it back into your master branch through the merge process. So this one is much simpler to follow, and it doesn't have a lot of the spaghetti that the gitflow workflow can have, and I can show you what I mean by looking at this diagram here. And it's very tiny print. I'm going to try and make it a little bit bigger. When you use branching strategies, as this blog post shows, this is an example of branching and what happens when you start to use a gitflow, a workflow like the gitflow workflow. I don't know about you, but this is giving me a headache just looking at all the different colors. And if you have a lot of people working on a project and everyone's creating branches and then bringing those changes back in, you can end up with something like this when you use a workflow like the gitflow workflow. You end up with a lot of what these call merge commits, as you bring one branch into another. And you also have a lot of branches coming off to create hot fixes or features here. Each one of these lines in this graph represents a different branch. And you can compare this to the anti-gitflow workflow, where you've got two branches, and you can see where a hotfix was created, but then that hotfix was merged in, and that branch ends, and then we continue on with development with master. So it's much easier to follow this one with just two branches. So with Commitmas and your branching strategies, I would recommend that you start with branching just by take your master branch and create a new branch from it. So when you create your branch, you'll start off at your most current commit, wherever you happen to be at that point in time. And then you can edit some files, and you can continue your work. You could even take it in an entirely different direction than what you thought. It allows you to try out new ideas. And if you don't like the result, you could always just delete the branch, but if it happens to be something useful, you'll have to come back for the next Commitmas and learn about how to merge your work back into your main branch or your master branch once you get that back in. That's all I really had for branching. It's pretty basic the way Git does it, so like I said, there's no real magic behind it other than it's just taking that commit that you happen to be on, and it is tagging it with a new name, and then it keeps track of it from there, so that they're really just snapshots at that point. They're really easy to use, very low cost.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you can switch back out just by checking out your master branch, and there you go. You've just switched back. All your work is back to where it was, and you can keep on going like nothing happened.
And if you've opted for the spaghetti methodology, I would assume that you're just switching between branches that same way the entire time. So if you've got 4 or 5 different branches you might be popping between those for whatever purpose that happens to be.
Exactly. So if you were to do a gitflow workflow, right, you'd have a development branch, you'd have a feature branch, you'd have maybe a hotfix branch, you might even have a release branch, and now you've got all these branches that you're dealing with, and that is one of the issues with the gitflow workflow is that the author points out in this anti-gitflow blog is that because you're relying on the human now to manage all of these branches, and you've put these rules in place that aren't really defined in the software, you've kind of given yourself enough rope to hang yourself with at that point, and that he advocates for a much simpler approach where use as many branches as you want, but delete them when you're done, clean up when they're not needed, and really just stick to the one master branch. And definitely branch for features or hot fixes, but that's really all you should need.
Cool. Well, we're all quiet on the, let me double check that chat front. Question front looks good. I think that's a wrap if you're ready.
Yeah, that's branching in a nutshell. There's not really much else to it. Again, the magic behind branching is just the fact that because Git can do those snapshots, and it's not really like unlike other version control systems, they're very quick and easy to create, and you can play around with them as much as you like, and then delete them, and there's almost no performance penalty at all. So definitely use them. They're a great feature to have, and you can even list. Let's see. I should probably have mentioned that one. Let's see. You can list your local branches as well. So if you ever forget about what branches you actually have running, and it does tell you which branch you're currently on by doing a little nice highlighting there so that you can find them.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Mike. If you're catching the recording on this and you want to see some other Commitmas episodes on Git, you can catch us at bit.ly/commitmas2 with a capital C. I didn't mention that in the show notes earlier. And with that, thank you very much. Thanks for the folks that are here. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Sean.